Welcome to Single Track episode 202. I'm your host, Matthias Eichler. Big shout out to Tailwind Nutrition, ongoing supporters of this fine audio product. Tailwind has been teasing on their social media channels a new flavor of their endurance fuel, and I can't wait to hear what it is. Well, I hope it's not pumpkin spice, given the timing of the announcement. So, go check out tailwindnutrition.com to learn all about my favorite endurance fuel, and follow them on Instagram to learn all about their upcoming product release. Thank you, Tailwind. All right, Abram Dickerson is back on the show, and we chat about Aspire Adventure Running's jam-packed summer adventures all over the West Coast. The calendar of events and trips for the year 2022 is about to open up for registration, and you should go and have a look. The trips are small group guided trail running events from Yosemite to the North Cascades and beyond. There's something for anyone, especially their wilderness first aid courses in partnership with Backcountry Medical Guides. Looks like an incredible course where you learn invaluable fundamentals that will keep you alive on the trails. So, listen into the show and go check out aspireadventurerunning.com for all the info. Abram, thanks for being back on Single Track. How have you been? The summer, as it sounds like, has been crazy for you.
We just wrapped up our season. There's one more women's trip happening this weekend that I'm not going on. And it's just been full on, and I'm actually full on at the computer because registration for next year, our group registration opens on Friday. So it's I'm just kind of in it right now. So
you with Aspire, you had sort of a unique summer considering everybody else. I suppose you sit in a very unique place. And I'm recording all of this already, so we can kind of chop this up and think. But you immediately answered it so honestly, so I thought we need to capture this. So you with Aspire, you sit in a very unique place in the sense that what's that?
You mean my closet?
Well, yeah, exactly. Physically unique too. No, that's actually very common. Podcasters end up sitting in closets, so that makes very much sense.
Oh, all right. Go ahead. I won't interrupt you.
No, it's all good. I mean, in a sense that race directors are still very much scrambling how to best host their events. And race directors bring the community together and work with trail runners, for trail runners, and get people in the outdoors. When you've found a way to sort of do this in a really small scale, with small groups, and I'm talking about especially when it comes to COVID and stuff, right? You sort of have been able to almost take advantage of the situation. And I'm not trying to say that in a negative. I'm saying you found a really good way of positioning yourself. Do you see that as well? I don't know if I'm putting this in the right words. I don't want to make this sound bad, because I remember, and I'm give you another example. What I'm trying to say is when we hosted my LBA race this summer, that was very late July. And I remember we got the green light with permits and everything in June, right? Sort of when vaccinations were first happening, and then that was really before the Delta variant really hit, and everything seemed to get better, and then it didn't. And I was worried just before, a week before race day, that everything would get shut down for me again, because everything is still so unsure, right? But because you have smaller groups, I think it might be a little easier to sort of create a safe community space.
Yeah, I think the short answer to that is yes. I think the thing about it is we didn't really change our model for COVID in as much. We had to make some adaptations for sure. but we were kind of already working in a smaller group space, and that originally kind of just grew out of the constraints with groups in wilderness. And
Hmm.
so, fortunately, with COVID, like it didn't require a fundamental shift in like the model, you
Yeah.
know. So, I mean, for sure, like, I mean, we ran trips in 22 or 2020, which like, I mean, nothing was happening that summer,
Yeah.
and the outdoor recreation guiding community was one of the first, like entity groups to get permission from the state to operate, because of small groups and outdoors. But it was really kind of funny, like even though like last summer we had permission to operate, but then from the state, but like parks and forests and all of these land managers hadn't quite caught up yet. So it's like, oh, we've got green lights to operate, but no campgrounds are open or
No place to actually go.
yet.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know. I'm diving
yeah,
super deep into sort of a meta conversation just because I see these outdoor experiences obviously from a business side too, and not just from the I don't know, consumer side, if I which would reduce your participants down to just another consumer word. Obviously, there is more to it. Let's backtrack. We'll dive into this, Ian. My head is always full with business ideas because I just came back from 3 weeks in Europe, where in Europe, sort of these small groups and these sort of guided trips are a lot more popular. Let's give us a quick, especially to the listeners who perhaps don't 100% know what you're doing. Give us a quick update of what were your summer highlights in terms of what you've been up to, and then we'll circle back to this. I sort of jumped the gun a little bit.
sure. Yeah, I guess folks don't know. So Aspire Adventure Running we operate under a guiding and outfitting model specifically for trail runners in wilderness and backcountry spaces. And so what that kind of looks like sort of on the ground is a recognition that people move through trails and mountains in wild spaces with lots of different styles. There's the backpackers who, will spend, a week traversing, 30 miles and camping out and covering, 8 miles a day. There's mountaineers who are trekking up mountains, and there's fast packers who are, going light and fast over these distances. There's runners that go out for day trips, and so there's just different ways, and they're all fantastic ways of being outside. What Aspires is really sought to do is unlock, like, well, how do you cover some of these bigger distances that runners have the fitness and the desire for, but without having to carry any of that gear, that would kind of necessitate a backpacking style experience. So, so we've basically filled that space with logistics between, these established base camps or camps that we move, a lot of logistical support that allows people to, be in the hills with a running vest, for, 10, 20, 30 miles a day over multiple days, and really have a pretty great wilderness experience, and then come in from a big day on the trails, and there's food and there's beer and there's community, and we just really focus on taking care of people and the recovery and the community side of things, so folks can get out and do it again the next day.
It's an absolute brilliant model. Give us some of your personal highlights over this summer. Some of those moments that you sort of experience and cherish with you, especially from a personal point of view.
Yeah, well, I've had a busy year. I mean, we started running trips in the last weekend of May, and we didn't stop until, like, my last trip was last weekend, and then there's one more happening this weekend. So it's been a whirlwind for sure. Like literally trips every weekend.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Yeah. So, each one of the places we go is pretty special. So, I guess I'll go here. Like, it was really great to be in Yosemite this year.
Hmm.
Uh, that was, we ran our first trips there in 2019, nothing in 2020 because of COVID. And so we got back to that area. Um, and I know it's interesting. Like, we were kind of talking about COVID a little bit earlier, but like there were some circumstances that really forced us to really look at our flow and our logistics for that trip. Typically we use a lot of kind of drive-in campgrounds that are in the northern part of Yosemite along the Tioga Road, and all those campgrounds were closed because the park didn't have staffing this year, and so we had the green light to operate, but our traditional campgrounds were not available. So anyways, we were able to like hustle pretty hard and put together a really special itinerary over 4 days that actually ended up starting on this homestead that was homesteaded by this guy named Theodore Solomon, which was like private homestead. This guy was contemporaries with John Muir, and he actually helped lay out, large sections of the John Muir Trail. And so he has this homestead just outside the park boundary. He's long gone. But now 4 generations later, his like great, 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 great granddaughter, is raising her family on this private property. And that was like our launching pad for the trip. It was just awesome to kind of meet with them and hear these stories. And then we spent 4 great days all in sort of Yosemite high country. We ended up doing a little bit more shuttling than we usually do, but we had this fantastic campground up at Tioga Lake, and I don't know, it was just like, we did 3 trips, and
Did it feel quieter at Yosemite this year?
yeah, they're definitely capping things at 80% in terms of, the permits that, or you need to get into the park. You have to have a reservation. I'd predict that system is here to stay. I think COVID kind of gave them the excuse to kind of develop that, and I would be pretty surprised if it ever goes back to just being totally open during the high peak season.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
But where we run and where we are, like there's a couple of places, near the trailheads where it's a little bit busier, but it's definitely not the mayhem that, most people experience when they go to Yosemite Valley.
Mm.
We're off up in Tuolumne Meadows and up in some pretty, more remote spaces for sure.
You bringing up Yosemite makes me dream of these times that I've been in. This is one of the places in the US that I felt like that truly had lived up to all the hype. And I don't think, for me as a European, there was a single place that was even more hyped. Growing up in the 80s was sort of the second wave of rock climbing, heroism down in Yosemite. I was constantly being surrounded by these images, and I sort of went the first time expecting to be disappointed, and I did not get disappointed at all. I was shocked that it truly lived up to all the hype. It's truly a spectacular place. You do a lot going to the Pacific Northwest, though. You do a lot on these little islands. I'm super fascinated by that. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing here, because you do stuff at Wonderland and the North Cascades, but I think your island stuff is very unique.
Yeah, we live in a beautiful place. We've got the North Cascades in our backyard and the San Juan Islands in our front yard. And so, again, it kind of goes into this, like, what are these places that are special that have like this logistical lift that, is going to be harder for people just to get there on their own. And we have 2 different islands that we run trips out of, Susha and Cypress. Both of them are largely uninhabited islands. Like Susha, the whole island is a state park. There's no permanent residents that live there. And there's no public ferries that access the island. So we charter private boat taxis, bring out all the gear and the food, and kind of like set up these just really fantastic beach camps, that are, they're just fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
You're out here in the islands, and surrounded by often the larger distance. You can see the Olympics and Mount Baker and the North Cascades, and then in the foreground you've got sea lions and otters and tide pools and just single track trails just like right there at your feet. So it's the Salish Sea ecosystem is just a really special place, and so getting runners out into these places is a lot of fun.
And so for listeners who are interested, obviously you've got a website and we'll link in the show notes, and we go to some stuff for what you're doing in 2022 later. But the nice thing is that people can come and run, and the distances you're offering isn't just for the pros, right? You have shorter distances. Give us a little bit of an overview of kind of what runners sort of need to be capable of doing in order to really get the most out of your trips.
Yeah, I think we've gotten better about kind of articulating the different styles of trips that we operate. And so, we have trips that are like where there's a pretty clear fixed objective. We call they're essentially our stage trips, where over multiple days you're signing up to do a particular route. That's like what our Wonderland Trail is, our Lost Coast Trail, the North Cascades Traverse. There are these lines that are ribbons of trail through a specific zone that are fantastic. They're great. But you're pretty committed to those distances. There's degrees of difficulty within that category. The other style, and this is kind of where the islands kind of fit in, we have some other, like, we call them rendezvous. So rather than like it being a specific trail, it's really a particular zone. And so with a base camp and with some shuttles and with some logistics, we're able to help people really unlock a particular pocket of trails. And so with that, there's a lot more flexibility in the distance. So in that style of a trip, each day there'll generally be multiple distance offerings, anywhere between, 5 miles a day up to 25 miles a day. And so people can really choose, it's choose what they're up for. It's a great place to get in the training block if someone's interested in stage style or multi-day running and have never done something like that. The rendezvous are a great way just to kind of like, just to kind of play with that experience,
Amazing.
Pro.
Your camps that you're putting up, it sounds amazing, but for me as a European who just went through the huts in Europe, it also sounds insanely exhausting, because similar guide service businesses in Europe would have the luxury of just needing to know what huts are available. And of course, you need to pre-book that. And obviously, the big ones are in high demand. But I mean, that's where your skill then as a local guide comes in, that you know what you can do. You have to literally bring everything in and build something from scratch, which it's not a quality statement. I'm not saying one is better or the other, but for me, this sounds exhausting too. Speak to this a little bit. I mean, of course, you're committed. You don't have an alternative, but...
Well, I mean, I think, ultimately it kind of comes down into... I mean, it really just kind of comes back down to kind of an American wilderness ethos, Europe, just took a different approach to their mountains. I mean, they lived in the mountains for centuries, right? And worked and that intersectionality between humans and mountains was really present. And there was never really necessarily, like, in that evolution, there wasn't necessarily, like, I think there was always a healthy respect and appreciation for mountains, but there wasn't like hey, we need to conserve this space. Whereas the wilderness in the States, you had Lewis and Clark and all these explorers coming out of these vast stretches of wilderness, like, holy cow, and coming out of Yosemite, there was this, like, we need to conserve and protect. Anyway, so that lineage of how human beings related to these wild spaces just set up something really different. So, I mean, I think what Europe has in terms of their hut systems is amazing, and it's great. And like, talk about gondola access into some gorgeous terrain. We don't have that in the American wilderness. There's a few little pockets, where there's some exceptions to that. But, so I've often said that Aspire is sort of the closest thing sort of to the European hut system. We just have to move it.
Yeah, no, I think it's brilliant. I love that analogy. No, for sure. For sure.
But I mean, how exhausting is it? We've gotten better over the years at really dialing in our system of exactly how much we need. Like our 10 by 20 shelter is basically a giant easy up style tent. But you put a heater in it and put the sidewalls up on it, and it can be storming outside, and folks can come in and be warm and comfortable. And that with a little bit of our backcountry shower, and pretty quickly people have eaten some food and they're warm and they're dry, and then they crawl into their tent. And it's like, oh, this isn't so bad. I can do this again tomorrow.
Well, that does sound very perfect. So, you personally, not just you as a business owner, if you are so committed all summer long, where do you get out? Where do you? I mean, are you able to steal yourself away to go on a solo run, or do you take a week off, or do you just do all of your personal adventuring then in the winter times or in the shoulder seasons?
Yeah, it's a little bit of all of the above. So I definitely run on the trips for sure. My staff, we're always sort of like, there's always kind of a little bit of jockeying for who gets to do what on the different trips, in terms of who's setting up the camps and who's sweeping and what those different roles are. Like I've definitely been out on trips and felt like, okay, staff, you've got it. You've got this all under control. Definitely some great days this year just happened by me unplugging from that and like being in the high Sierra. I had a really great day on our third Yosemite trip, just tagging a bunch of granite peaks and ridge lines just out by myself for 10 hours. That was a good day.
Fantastic.
And then, we always squeeze stuff in, kind of like we did some great high routes in the Sierra before our Yosemite trip started. And I'm always reconning different areas. And, now that it's basically October, I feel like there's still another solid month here of I've got a list of runs and projects I'm hoping to squeeze in. And then, once the snow really starts flying, like I love ski touring. So
cool. And from a business side, if you could spin a map, a globe, and put your finger somewhere, giving your infrastructure and obviously your expertise, is there some super outlandish place where you would put on one of your Aspire trips that's not reasonable, right? I'm not talking about your 2022 calendar where you might have expanded a little bit or so, right? Let's be unreasonable. Where would you go and put on an Aspire trip if if you could be completely crazy?
Oh, well, I think I am a little crazy. Yeah, I think, I think getting up into the Waddington Range up in BC would be really cool. There's a Waywash circumnavigation down in Peru that definitely has my eye. I was talking with a guy just this last weekend about some high routes with some huts over like in Poland and Eastern Europe. Like, I don't think there's a lack of locations,
No, for sure.
I've always thought, man, wouldn't it be sweet if we could like helicopter people into like, remote BC and just like run ridge lines for days. And
there's a whole hut system up in BC, just below Whistler, which I think is only accessible via helicopter. Yeah, I mean, it would be fantastic to do something out of there. I remember learning about these huts a couple of years ago, and I thought it would be incredible to visit them. In the BC in general, I think helicopter travel seems to be almost as easy as getting an Uber. Not as cheap, but it's easy. I feel like there's a lot more. Let's just fly there because we can't access it any other way.
So that's what we do. So,
yeah, exactly.
Your sense of normal just becomes really different. So.
All right. Okay. So those are the crazy ideas. I love it. I recently, I don't know if you're familiar with vacation races. They do all of these sort of half marathons in what is sort of adjacent to national parks. But they started some international trips, which I thought was interesting. They're expanding out, and so I was quite curious about how they're doing. Obviously, they have a huge organization. I ran their Zion 100 this year, and I kind of got to know their organization a little bit. It's a completely different beast in terms of logistical operation. All right, let's talk about 2022. So let's be reasonable and not talk about BC and Poland. What you got going for 22? You officially launched your calendar. You announced your calendar, which is exciting. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the calendar is live. I mean, it's going to look pretty similar in a lot of ways. We actually haven't told people what our new trips are yet.
Okay. So you pre-announced that the calendar is going to be live. So wait, what?
The calendar is live. It has all of like anything that we've done before is already on there, but there's a couple trips that, we actually have an end of season reveal party.
Oh, when is that at?
That is on November.
Okay.
Let me pull it up. November 7th.
Okay. Listeners, November 7th. Are you going to do like an online viewing Zoom situation? How are you revealing this?
Yeah, it's an online kind of a thing. We started it last year. We give out awards from the season. Basically stuff we just make up. We always give out an award to whoever had the longest day on the trail that season. We give out an award for our most senior runners. We call it our orbiter, most trips around the sun. We usually have like a puke and rally award. The staff, we just kind of get creative. Like, hey, who do we really want? Just we have a lucky Lisa award, who's like a wildlife whisperer. We saw more bears with her than anyone else on the entire trip.
Nice.
5 bear sightings in one day. It was incredible.
Oh, crazy.
And then they were all with this one person, so I think she's the bear whisperer.
Oh, for sure.
So we do that. We have a annual haiku contest, slideshow of photos, and then we kind of drop what our new trips are for the upcoming year. So
okay. So this is a pre-announcement, so we can't reveal anything yet on the show, which is fine. But your general calendar is on your website.
There may not be whitewater rafts involved.
Ooh, I see. You're sort of expanding out a little bit. I like it. Well,
first step before helicopters,
Exactly. Nice. Tell me a little bit about your partnership in offering those wilderness medicine, backcountry medicine classes, courses that you're offering, because this is me personally being very interested in this. This is not just me as a host asking about this.
Yeah, so, we talked about our stage trips, our rendezvous, another sort of category of offerings that we're working on our skills specifically, and recognizing that a lot of runners, people come to running through lots of different ways, and there's definitely sort of a pipeline and a pathway that comes up through, high school and collegiate sports and roads, and then people discover the trails and generally, are pretty enamored with them. but then if they don't come from a more background of like mountains or hiking or climbing, then there's an awful lot of skills that that aren't cultivated in that traditional road pipeline. Wilderness first aid being one of those. So as people are spending more and more time out on trails as runners, then it's important for us as responsible trail users to have the skills to plan for and respond to incidents and emergencies. And wilderness first aid is just kind of one of those fundamental skill sets. And so Backcountry Medical Guides is an outfit. They're actually based out of Bellingham. They're really fantastic. I've taken first aid classes from a number of different organizations and entities, and really impressed with these guys. What their approach is is really based around sport specific medicine. So like 70% of their curriculum is just like fundamental patient assessment, mechanisms of injury, medicine that you need to just have as a foundation. And then the other 30% of the curriculum, they really adapt to whatever user group they're teaching to, whether that's mountain bikers or backpackers, or in our case, like runners. So, we've partnered with them. We actually do a trip out on Susha Island. So it's great. So we work out all the logistics. We get this big crop of runners that come out onto the island. And I can't really imagine a better classroom anywhere. I mean, you're just out on these beautiful beaches, and John and his staff do a lot of scenario-based instruction. And there's just a lot of really good discussion everyone from like, hey, what are the common injuries we're going to see? What are the things we need to be thinking about and anticipating to avoid injury? And so, yeah, it's just a really great foundation for anyone that's spending time on trails.
Yeah, no, this sounds absolutely brilliant. I have been eyeing this one now for a couple of years. I think this is something that I need to invest in as one becomes more and more serious of a runner and goes more and more into the backcountry and off the beaten path, and also becomes in some respects more confident, right? I think as the runs get longer and the trails more exposed perhaps as the training even sort of validates more and more solo running, or running in smaller groups where perhaps can't rely on other runners, or you are perhaps the strongest runner. To have a skill like that is something that we don't really talk about when we're just talking about races, because in races we're sort of taken care of and we're so worried about our gear and perhaps our nutrition. We don't really think about injuries in that regard, and I think that's probably a big oversight on our part. In some respects, it's probably natural human nature. Nobody wants to think about it, and perhaps thinks that by not thinking about it, we can think it away as an issue. But it's something we probably need to take very serious. Okay.
Strategy until it's not.
Yeah, exactly. It works great. Well,
and inevitably, just you spend time on trails, and it may not be you or someone in your group that's going to need help, but maybe it's a hiker or someone else. Like, you're going to encounter people. So
no, absolutely. I think that makes perfect sense. And it's such a valuable skill to regularly refresh and have with you as an experience, as a skill, being able to know how to respond in that regard. How do you guys do this on your races? I mean, on your trips, I'm assuming you guys as staff are all certified. Do you have to deal with injury? Is there experiences that you can retell where you're saying, here is what happens and this is how we dealt with it?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like all of our staff have, the class that we do on Sushi is like a 3-day wilderness first aid. All of our staff are wilderness first responders, so it's like a 10-day course. So it's definitely a different level of training. And so, it's the kind of things you would expect, honestly. I mean, we've had a number of rolled ankles. Fortunately, all those people are able to kind of, we have ACE wraps and things. People are able to kind of hike themselves out. Pain mitigation, ibuprofen to get people out. Nutrition is definitely an issue. People that, have issues fueling on runs. We have a doctor that sort of consults with us in all of our medicines and the pharmacology that we carry on the trail. So we've got some, like Zofran is like an anti-nausea med that, we're able to kind of carry and administer when that becomes a thing. Bee stings are on the regular.
Oh, yeah.
And, that happens quite common. We had a gal duck under a log, some blowdown. She came up and like cracked, just split her forehead wide open, just bled all over the place. She'll probably get an award this year.
Yeah, I think that deserves an award. I would vote for that.
Yeah. So it's not the major, we're not out there riding mountain bikes or climbing, with the risk of like major trauma. Certainly it can happen, but, I think, I think it's not that there's not a ton of blood and gore, but I think it's also a situation where I think this is kind of true of like most wilderness things, in the sense that like, if you don't have the proper tools and the right response, like something small down the line can become a bigger thing, So, wasn't a big deal that this gal split her head open, because I had everything I needed in my kit, with steri strips and gauze to like address it, flush it, to get all the infection out of it, dress it, tape it up, and she was fine, But like, man, if we didn't have those things, like it would have been a bloody mess, and like just like could have gotten infected. So it's like, that's the nature of wilderness. I think travel is like, hey, this is a small thing, a small decision that I'm making, and as long as it's the correct decision, then things are going to be pretty, generally going to take a pretty good trajectory. But like, yeah, they have a way of kind of creating a life of their own if you don't have those small responses to small things. That makes sense?
Yeah, no, I think that very much makes sense. I think that's sort of the smart response in a situation like that. That is good.
We have things like navigation, like, oh, I think I might have made a wrong turn, and if you're kind of aware and have a larger meta sense of your navigation, and then you have the tools to make a correction, a small turn is not a big deal. It's like, it's when you aren't sort of aware of your surroundings and you end up like multiple miles down the trail and you think, well, maybe I'll just bushwhack back or something. And like that small thing compounds, or a weather decisions, like, so these little small things. And I think all of that's just kind of accumulation of a lot of time in the woods you learn.
Yeah. And I think it's right to say that the more time you spend out there, of course, spending time on the trail, just your basic experience will teach you something when it comes to weather and other things. But at the same time, I think it is also important to do additional learning and skill gathering that goes beyond just the time on the trail, right? And to be able to sort of make risk assessments, because ultimately there are certain things that you want to mitigate before they actually happen. You don't just want to learn everything by doing. Some of the things you want to have some experience before, or some skill learning beforehand. So I think you can't just rely only on time out on the trail to gather your experiences and your wisdom, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I mean, that's kind of a little bit of a plug for our skills courses in general. Like for this coming year, we will have some new skills courses that we're working on, fast packing and navigation, off trail travel, um, and some other things. So you can bring your running fitness and foundation, but be in an environment where like, hey, we're not just going to do the thing, we're going to talk about the thing and why we're doing this thing and the necessary equipment to do this thing safely and all the different kind of decision making sort of opportunities along that way.
No, I think it's great, right? I mean, we both are on that Seattle Mountain Running Facebook group, and we often hear, we often hear people asking about gear advice, where people are spending lots of time and lots of money and coming up with, what gear they might need in order to improve their running experience, and people are spending lots of time and money on nutrition advice and trying to figure out how to improve that aspect. And what we don't hear a lot is this request to improve these skills that in the end improve your running, especially because they can keep you alive, right? It's sort of a different level of skill that we want to acquire that is not really on the forefront of most runners. Like, I don't hear people asking for navigation skill advice. They're asking for running routes and stuff, but they're not really asking for that. But I think that's important. We had this summer several times when wilderness backcountry hikers had gotten lost. And luckily, I think most of the experiences I heard, they were able to be found alive, probably partially due because it was a fairly dry summer, and so the weather was fairly safe to be out a few days. But we don't hear about it. Last year's Cushman 6 route that was so much backcountry travel, I would have not completed it if it wouldn't be for someone who had excellent navigation skill and was able to sort of guide us through some of the more difficult to navigate areas.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes. Let's quickly talk about the Wonderland this year. This is a completely different topic, but I need to talk with somebody about it. And I don't know if you have any insight or any opinion, but I'm just going to ask you about it because you obviously do guided trips on Wonderland. You love the Wonderland Trail very much. Why do you think did in 2020 the Wonderland Trail get so much attention? So many FKTs were happening, and of course the simple answer is, there weren't any races, so people focused on the Wonderland. But I would have assumed that with all this attention last year, that would have carried to this year. But I feel like I didn't hear anything. Did anybody run the Wonderland this summer? I mean, it felt like nothing was going on, and I was really surprised by that. I don't know if you have an opinion, but you're the one who gets that questions asked because it's been burning for a few weeks now. I felt like we had a very favorable summer to be able to do something out there. So I'm curious, you were actually out there. Perhaps I just didn't hear about it, but I felt like I'm pretty good tuned in to what was happening, and I felt like nothing was.
Yeah, that's an interesting. I'll be honest. Like I did one trip on the Wonderland all summer, and I was off running other trips simultaneously. So during the Wonderland season, so I largely handed that one off to my staff this year. But they dip. So I wasn't out there as much as I typically am personally, like on the trail. So this would just kind of be conjecture. I think you kind of maybe answered it for yourself in the sense like it did receive a bunch of attention last year. And so I think, I would just say people are maybe just looking for other things and other projects. It's like, the bar got set, I mean, I don't even know how far did that FKT time drop? I mean, it dropped a lot, several hours last year, for the FKT times on it.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely. I mean, it was a blistering year last year, and it was compounded in a very short time frame too, um, which I thought was also very interesting. Um, I mean, you ran it. I know that early in the season, I think the Mount Rainier season was anyway a little bit interesting because early in the season we had record snow and then we had record snow melt, which I remember when people were first talking about trying to do the Wonderland just in certain sections and stuff. Right at that record snow melt, there were some bridges out. So by the time you did your routes out there, your runs out there, the bridges were back on. So the trail was in good shape, right?
yeah, the bridges didn't get back in until like mid-August, like at least the ones
Oh.
in Howich, and then the water coming around White River, like they were still skirting people around the log crossing out of White River and kind of down to Frying Pan Creek, by mid-August. Um, but no, I mean the trail was definitely in and in earlier because of the heat dome. If anything, it felt like the trip that I did on it was in early August, and my general feel in early August was like, wow, man, this feels like early September. Just
Mm-hmm.
the lack of snow melt, the amount of snow melt, the lack of snow on the trail, the lack of snow on the mountain itself. It's like, wow, this is like, what month is it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is it September? What's going on? But in terms of the trail itself, like it was definitely in and runnable. So
I'm just on the fastest known time website, and if I'm counting very quickly correct, in 2020 there were 7 records broken with various supported, unsupported, male, female, and stuff. So there are 7 times a fastest known time was set in 2020, and as of today, end of September, which means the season's, oh yeah, if you include the double Wonderland, then there's 2 more and makes it 9, and then triple Wonderland because Christoph Teuscher did it a couple times. So several times people did it.
3 times.
Yeah, exactly. Several times the records were broken last year, and this year nobody attempted. I mean, sure, right? I mean, all the races were back, and so I think the pro runners who would have gotten after this, they all had their free race of Renty rollover or whatever it was, right? But I mean, UTMB was back, Hard Rock was back, and so the big summer races drew the attention. But in general, these races don't attract that many pro runners. That's I assumed somebody would have attempted it, especially after all this attention that we got last year. Anyway, that's something that's on my mind because I find it fascinating. And the Wonderland is right outside our front door, if you will, and so kind of staying up to date with what's happening there is sort of fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have a good answer for you on that one. I think it'd be conjecture on my part.
Well, all right. So, can you give us an update on the Trail Run Film Festival? Where are you at with that? You see, it's a good transition from the Wonderland because I assume if people would have run the Wonderland, they would have made a film about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's we really had hoped that we would be, the origin of the film festival, was definitely James Varner. And, traditionally has been a national tour in theater experience and really with the intent being like, put on your street clothes, drink a beer, be in this really nice theater, on the big screen, great sound, like seeing some of the best and most inspiring films. And I think that remains our kind of like goal for what type of experience we want to provide. It's just, and this year, it's just, we just haven't felt confident enough about bringing people indoors in the winter, in various cities across the country. Like, maybe it would work in Portland, but maybe it doesn't work in Atlanta, or I could be totally wrong. It just felt way too many known unknowns for like pulling off a national theater tour. So we are planning another live stream, virtual style experience with the film festival. We've got some cool, one of the great things that came out of of 2020 was we were able to raise funds specifically for grants. We've got a diversity and equity grant, so we funded some specific films, from, non-white male classic narratives that we're really excited to show. It's going to happen in January.
Okay.
We're going to kind of put it in the winter pocket where we're not competing with anything in the holidays. We're giving our filmmakers who shot films over the summer a little bit more time to do their editing. There's a big running event down in Austin where we're hoping to line up sponsors. So anyway, so it's coming. It'll be sort of mid to later January, when runners really don't have a whole lot else going on. So we're excited to.
No, I think that's brilliant. So everyone, put something onto. This is your first thing that you can put on your calendar for 2022, another virtual version of the Trail Run Film Festival coming in January. That's super exciting. I've loved the virtual ones. I think towards the end of last year there was a general fatigue with looking at a screen, but I don't think it had anything to do with the film festival because, we're in a pandemic. I think that we were just fatigued in general. I think there's definitely some virtual fatigue, but I think we also made some great investment in community with I talked to a lot of runners this summer who really were appreciative of the work we did with that, and as it being something they could tune into and stay connected over the year when things weren't happening. So I think we've got a lot of brand equity. A lot of people who will be excited to do it. We're just, trying to figure out like what's the best return on our work investment and time frame to really put out the best show possible. And it really came down to like, I think January is the pocket, to really make it shine. Fantastic. And then hopefully at some point we'll be able to gather in person again in some version indoors, right?
To happen for sure. It's just yeah.
What can we say about that? Get vaccinated, everyone.
Yeah, totally.
All right. This is all the topics that I have on my little topic list. Do you have anything that is worth sharing from your end? I know I reached you sort of a little bit too early. You sound very much still like in the weeds. If I would have waited another month or so, perhaps you would have had a little bit of a breathing moment, and you would have already planned your Poland trip or something. But
yeah, no, I think no, I do have a winter project that's in the works, but I'm not quite sure I'm ready to kind of go. Yeah, we'll see.
All right. That's good. It's always tricky to announce these projects in the future, right? I sort of it's inspiring to others and stuff, but then if something doesn't turn out the way, then you sort of feel like you're dealing with that pre-announcement hype.
Yeah.
We had somebody on the show a few weeks ago who was telling us about a big summer project, and then she got injured, and I felt really bad because I felt like her coming on the show and pre-announcing it would it felt like she jinxed it, which of course she didn't. That's not how this works. But with these kind of projects, things just sometimes don't work out that way. So I totally get it. Abram, Thank you so much. Give our listeners a quick overview of where they can reach you. We'll link everything in the show notes afterwards as well.
Yeah, I mean, all of our course information is on aspireadventurerunning.com. You know, our social medias, we're on Facebook and Instagram, aspire.adventure.running for Instagram. I mean, you know, we've used a lot of words to describe what we're doing, but I mean, it really is true that like a picture is worth, you know, many, many words. So, we have, you know, Nick Danielson, who's a local photographer, videographer here in the Pacific Northwest, is super talented and he's done a lot of great work on our visuals. So it's definitely, you know, seeing is believing, I think, in a lot of these things, like the kind of the places we're getting into. So there's some beautiful runs all along the coast that, you know, we'd be happy to share with your listeners.
Fantastic. Thank you so much what you do for the community, how you're offering runners sort of a way to unlock their own potential, but also these incredible places that they themselves perhaps wouldn't be able to logistically figure out. And then beyond that, you're offering something that is different to the usual, here's a race, here's some flags, here's a bib, go out and run, right? I think races aren't the end all experience for us as trail runners, and you're offering an interesting way for people to experience the outdoors in a different way without the bib and the pressure of that performance in that sense. So that's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, and yes, we'll chat soon at a later time.